Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last class. So this is going to be our course culmination and peer critique. There are no additional readings for today, but putting everything together and revising and reflecting on research designs with integrity and rigor. And before I get into this video, I think it will be short. I wanted to say thank you for an awesome summer, awesome semester. You have just made it a really great 2 months for me. So I hope that you have enjoyed the course and again, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey and letting me hear about your research and offering my opinions. And I hope that you will continue to keep me in the loop as you continue on and continue to share your work with me. And I am really proud of everything that you have accomplished. Okay, so getting into our class for today. So the goals for this final class are to be able to critically evaluate the coherence and complexity of qualitative research designs, not just yours, but others. So we have been doing this in each module with at the end of each module, doing a review of different elements of published research. And in this one, you are going to be engaging in peer critique. So being able to critically evaluate research design across conceptual framework to research questions to methods, and engaging in your peer critique as a method of the recursive process of design in a way to not only refine your own research questions, but engage in that dialogue to help others as well, offering feedback based on what you've learned about design, and feedback that is grounded in the course concepts to help others strengthen their design as well. One of the ideas that we are going to be talking about in this lecture, and this also came up in last week's reading, Marshall chapter 9, was the idea of soundness of qualitative research, and building on everything that we have been learning about trustworthiness and validity. And so being able to offer suggestions to make research more sound or to evaluate the soundness, the credibility, ethical transparency, methodological rigor, to support that reflective revision. And then with that, as you turn towards your own work, synthesizing the feedback that you've received from your peers about your design and reflections that you've made about your own design and throughout the course to identify for yourself concrete next steps to help finalize your design and your research proposal. So when some of the ideas to think about when you are engaging in the process of critiquing design, either someone else's design or your own, has centers around the idea of achieving design complexity. So design complexity has to do with all of the methods that you've included in your plan that will structure your research process so that you can completely, thoroughly, and adequately address your research question in a complex, rigorous, and nuanced way. So with this, it necessitates triangulation or crystallization, whichever framing you are using to talk about that construct, and a strategic sequencing of methods. So that's something else. I forgot to mention this in the last lecture, but in your appendices, you might include a timeline to show the sequencing of your methods. That's a way to demonstrate rigor, is to have clarity and clear sequencing of how your methods will unfold while still adopting a flexible and reflexive approach, understanding that you can be nimble and anticipate changes as we go and talk about how you will do that. So here are some questions that you can think about when you are evaluating whether or not design complexity has been achieved to demonstrate that rigor. So thinking about, have you or has someone else designed a study with enough and appropriate data sources given what your research questions seek to examine? So going back to your research questions, do your data sources that you have proposed, will they adequately address your research questions? If not, you might need to adjust your data collection or adjust your research question. Remember, you can always slightly tweak your research question to fully capture what it is you're hoping to understand. And do the research question and data sources fully address your goals? And again, that's kind of that iterative, reflexive process going back, thinking about that metaphor of making sure the bolts are in alignment before you tighten. So this is one of the things you can slightly tweak. Again, about the sequencing or data collection method, sequence in a way that helps you build an appropriate data set to respond to the research questions. Appropriate in terms of content, scope, and sequencing. In terms of participants, have you selected the appropriate set of participants who can, or informants who can provide the necessary information that you need to address your research questions? Have you engaged in multiple forms of triangulation or, again, whatever construct you're thinking of? And then moving on to analysis, have you selected the appropriate overall approach? Oh, this is more so about methodology. Have you selected the appropriate overall approach to getting the kind of data that you need? Do you have enough and appropriate data sources to provide the quality and depth? And then going back to considering with other studies and your literature review and your conceptual framework, is there anything that you might be able to add to your study based on that? Thinking about theory, how is theory guiding the design and all of the choices, and what assumptions underline the design and the choices? So making sure that you are being transparent about your positionality and engaging in reflexivity to think about those assumptions and how they come up. So this table is another way that you can use to critique or evaluate the coherence of a design, the rigor of a design. So this is broken up into different components of your design: the research questions, the goals, your procedures and processes or the methods, validity issues, strategies, and other considerations. So here are considerations for the data collection methods, participant selection, data analysis, and there are also considerations. I thought this was different. I think that there's another part to the table and I didn't include it. So we can find this in the book as well, to have the questions for your study goals and for your theoretical framework as well, to think about the extent that this component is demonstrating alignment. Another way to engage in this is going back to exercise 7.1 from Maxwell to think about the different components of your design. So when you are engaging in the peer critique, this is when you are going to respond to each other's research design poster. So the research design poster has your conceptual framework visual, your research design map, and your exploratory pilot data analysis. So for all of you, you will have your research design poster posted and everyone can go in and give you kudos and feedback and suggestions based on the alignment of your design. So if you have a particular question you want your peers and colleagues to respond to, you can go into your research design poster and at everyone and ask them some particular areas about your design to get feedback on. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the research design recursive critique, the final assignment. So this memo is going back and critically revisiting your research design using that recursive lens that we've been talking about all semester. So this is not you summarizing your project or even rewriting your project. Instead, you're critiquing what you've constructed, surfacing any tensions, blind spots, or shifts that have happened over the course of the semester. So this is your opportunity to evaluate your design and discuss what and how you will revise in terms of overall alignment, coherence, and readiness for future implementation. So this should demonstrate your engagement with course readings, our class periods, feedback that you've gotten from me on your assignments and mini memos, feedback that you got during the peer critique and perusal. This is your opportunity to assess the strengths, limitations, dilemmas, and gaps in your design. So this final paper really supports your development as a researcher who is able to not only design strong qualitative research, but in a way that is iterative and you know how to revise and strengthen it. So rigorous, reflexive, equity-oriented educational researcher. Think of it as a memo to self to support the next steps in the future iterations and revisions of your design. So here are some suggestions of things to include. So a reflection on the coherence and alignment of your design, overall big picture of your design using Maxwell's framework, or if you're using another framework, use that as well. Consider your evolving role of you as the researcher. How has your understanding shifted over the course of the semester or from the first memo to where you are now? Reflect on the quality of your design. Through which methods will you demonstrate validity or trustworthiness? That was a new idea that we added on in this module. So thinking about how are you going to conceptualize quality, what citations you'll use there, what elements or markers of quality do you value the most? So for item number 3, go back to class period 13 to help you do that. This idea of iterative design and incorporation of feedback. What elements of your design did you revise or do you plan on revising and why? And discuss specific examples or elements of feedback that you got from me, peers, or readings that led to those shifts in your design. Then tensions, what remains unresolved? What is your current thinking on potential ethical dilemmas that might arise? And then next steps, what is your plan to address these areas? And then if there's something else that comes up, please include that as well. So that is your next step, is to give your peer critique and to submit your final paper where you are reviewing your own design and coming up with an action plan for next steps. So I look forward to reading your final memo. And again, thank you so much for a great semester.